One moment, one accident, one really difficult event, and everything changes. So what do? Do you look back? Do you spend your time wishing for something to be different? Do you give up and feel sorry for yourself, or do you move forward? My guest, Mike Brown, chose to move forward after his accident. Tune in to hear Mike's story of adapting and defying and how he built the world of Adapt Defy.
Through that tragedy taught me life is finite. You really have a short window to take what it is from life that you want and enjoy it.
You can go back to that day, February 18, 1990, and change what happened. My honest answer is I wouldn't change it.
You're just going to have to go through it, and your strength is going to be found in simply going through it and being authentic and real in the process.
I was talking with my palliative care doctor today, and she turned around to me and she looked at me and she was like, do you think that you'll eventually beat this? And I was sort of like, yeah, that's probably what I'm trying to do.
No, nothing will ever take away the pain of my daughter not being here. It's my reality.
Well, I know what my body's going to do to me. I've got a wheelchair in my future. You know what I've been looking for?
What's that?
One with off-road wheels.
Just remembering me as I am, happy and energetic and full of life, no matter what.
You can expect life to kick you in the teeth, but you always get back up, no matter what, and you just keep going.
Living Adaptive with Scott Davidson.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. I hope you're doing well. If you haven't noticed, we have gone to a weekly release of the podcast, so we're going to continue to release episodes on a weekly basis unless travel comes up or whatever else life throws at us, but we will continue to stay in that realm of a weekly release. Also, we've had a bunch of really good guests in the last 2 months, all full of remarkable stories of adapting, and each guest is running some really meaningful organizations. So go check those episodes out, and you can head to livingadaptive.com to listen and find a bunch of other good stuff. And of course, the podcast is found on every major podcast hosting application. Today, I am joined by the Mike Brown. Following an accident in 2012 that left Mike Brown a paraplegic, he began to build his life and eventually began to build Adapt Defy. Adapt Defy's mission is to increase freedom for wheelchair users by connecting and highlighting a global community of Adapt Defiers and developing products that help them adapt and defy. Mike Brown works tirelessly to connect the community of Adapt Defiers. Mike Brown, thanks for coming on, brother.
Hey, Scott. So great to be with you, man.
It's awesome to connect, man. I love talking to other podcasters, people that broadcast and do a bunch of stuff. So it's really great having you on. And second, it's an honor because I love Adapt Defy. I love what you do. I love your site. I love everything about it. Can you tell us what Adapt Defy is?
Sure. Thanks, man. I appreciate the props.
Yep.
So Adapt Defy is, in essence, it's my contribution to the adaptive community. It's stemmed from finding things that frustrated me, things that made me feel disabled and slow, and seeing those and going, right, let's see if we can solve some of those problems. It was also a chance for me to, dig deeper and find the Adapt Defiers, as I like to call them, and bring their stories out, much like you, to share with others, people that may be lying in a hospital bed going, man, my life's over, and giving them some hope that, hey, actually, you were a skier before, so you can be a skier again. You were a surfer before, no problem. You can surf again, and here's these stories. And so Adapt Defy is kind of a cross between telling people stories and giving them hope that there's life post-injury or whether or not they use a wheelchair. And it's a product development company where we have a team of engineers, really creative people helping solve some problems that we in our community have identified.
First, you coined a term, Adapt Defier. Can you define that real quick? Because that's a great term.
So one of my early role models was Josh Jewick. He's a Canadian Paralympic skier, paraplegic, much like me. And what I saw Josh do was he adapted. Sure, he was able to function normally again, get his health right and use a wheelchair for his mobility. But Josh went beyond and he pushed through what he and others thought was possible, right? So he was the first guy to do a backflip on a sit ski, first person. And so I look at Adapt Defiers as those people out there that are pushing the boundaries, that are going beyond what conventional wisdom tells them is possible. And, by bringing this community of Adapt Defiers together, we're going to just increase the boundaries and increase the perception of what freedom means if you're a wheelchair user, particularly.
Adapt Defier, where's my T-shirt, man? That's a great T-shirt.
They're coming, mate. They're coming for sure.
Come on.
Yeah, totally. There's one with your name on it, Scott. Definitely.
Thanks, man. I will be purchasing as soon as they come out. I just love that term when I saw it. I'm like, that's a really cool term. Now, we should talk about you real quick. 2012, everything changed for you, man. Just to give some of our listeners an introduction to you, if they don't know who you are already, what happened, man?
Yeah, so people ask me, so how did you break your back? And what I like to say is, well, I've actually got to go back a wee step, because anything in life, context means a great deal. And so me as a person, I was a guy that just loved my freedom. I love the outdoors. And, all throughout my life, I've been encouraged to just try things and follow my heart, essentially. So I was successful in business in my early years, and I met the woman of my dreams, love of my life. And I said to her, hey, I've had this dream about sailing a boat around the world. Do you want to join me? And so we saved hard. I sold a business, and we bought a boat, and we lived on this boat. We actually flew to Mexico, bought this boat, and we lived on this boat, and we're just, having the time of our life, right? It was just incredible. We're living our dream. Mm-hmm. We had a son while we were there traveling with the boat, and we sailed our boat back to New Zealand across the Pacific with our baby. It was an incredible adventure. And that's a whole other story. But I guess the context I'm trying to set is that, I felt incredibly free. I felt like my life was going absolutely wonderfully. Got back to New Zealand, and there was some terrible earthquakes here. And, they basically destroyed whole towns. And so the opportunity to find work here wasn't great. At that point. So I moved to Australia with Kirsten and Ocean, my son, and I was working in the complete opposite environment to living freely on a boat. I was spearfishing every day. I was surfing. It was clean living, healthy living. And I found myself in a bauxite refinery, which is this big heaving industrial beast of a industrial plant. And 10,000 people on this massive site in the heat of Australia. And it was, 40 to 50 degrees centigrade every day. And the team of people I was working with were an intense bunch of people, quite narrow-minded in their worldview. And all I could say is that I was suffocating. And so for 18 months, I was leading a team of guys there, and we were getting back up on our feet financially because we hadn't been working for a number of years, and things were going good, but I was really, really stressed. And, I was working 12-hour days. I'd come home at the end of a day, and my overalls would be as if I'd jumped into a swimming pool. It was so hot. The work environment was filled with these superheated caustic soda tanks, 4 or 5 stories high, and there was a mist that came out of them and stung your skin. You had to wear protective everything all day. And I did that for 18 months solid, in direct contrast to this free life of living on a boat and spending every moment with my son and my wife. Anyway, one day I had this realization that I actually needed to find an outlet. So I purchased a skateboard, a longboard skateboard. And I thought, look, there was no surfing where I was, but there was these pathways. And, these nice asphalt pathways. And I said, I'm going to jump on this longboard skateboard. And for me, I was going to be surfing. And it was going to be my stress relief. It's going to be my place where I could get into flow. And I like that space where everything disappears and you're just in the moment. And it's like a reset button. And I really needed it. So one morning, I was skateboarding down this nice pathway. And I said to my wife, I'll meet you down at the local park, in 10 minutes. And so she was down there with Ocean, who was now 3, and I just never turned up. And so what happened was I was surfing in my mind. I was surfing through a barrel, and I was skateboarding down this hill. No cars around because we're in this really, really quiet little town. 2,000 people or something live there, and it was super early in the morning. You could hear the insects, and you think outback Australia, you can hear the insects. And I was setting off down this road, really enjoying myself. On the final corner, and on the corner there was a huge tree that blocked the view as you went round the corner. And I was on the final turn, just this final arcing, carving turn around the corner on this longboard. And I looked up, and there was a car heading straight for me, like split second.
Wow.
And there was no way I could avoid it. I leaned into the turn to try and avoid it. The car was on my side of the road. It cut the corner, and bam, head on, just smash. I was going probably 25 kilometers an hour. The car would have been traveling 60 k an hour. So it's a fairly sizable impact, and my back broke instantly. Like I whiplashed, and I was lying there on the road. And the first thing I remember was the woman who was the driver of the car was screaming at me, don't die. She was going, don't die.
Whoa.
And I thought, and it was like I was sunk into the pavement, and I was looking up, and it was the sound was echoing. It was a really strange sound. And I remember thinking, what is she talking about? What's going on here? And then it sort of dawned on me that, there was something was amiss, and there was, blood in my eyes, and the paramedics arrived, of course, and then they asked you that question, can you move your legs? And I couldn't. I looked down, and so that was the start of a crazy journey. My wife heard the ambulance from the park, which was close by, and turned up on the scene. She looked down at me. Her face went white, and interestingly, she had tried to shelter Ocean from the scene. She had parked up the road a wee bit. But several months later, Ocean one day just came out of the blue and said, "Dad, what were you doing sleeping on the road?"
Oh, no.
So he'd seen it, he'd sort of got that sense. But, the interesting thing, Scott, was that as I was lying there, I thought to myself, I was thinking, hey, man, it's not so bad. You've still got your mind. You've had this incredible life of adventure. I'd climbed mountains all over the world and surfed and sailed and skied and done all of these amazing things and mountain biked. Now's your chance to use your mind and, do something really meaningful with that. And that was at that moment, at that scene, as I was lying there, right? So people often ask me, they say, where does your optimism come from? I think it's just ingrained. And the other thing I say is, one of the things that helped me get through that period was I'd put myself in challenging situations my whole life. I'd kind of stretched my comfort zone wherever I possibly could. I'd spent minus 30 degrees with no sleeping bag in a snow cave for a week in mountains. I'd just done all of these things that had really tested my mental fortitude and my physical capability. And for anyone out there listening, I thoroughly recommend at any opportunity you have to just push yourself beyond what feels comfortable, because you never know when a situation like I found myself in will happen, and you're going to need to find that knowledge, that strength, that experience to get through it. And for me, I think that was one of the saving graces, and the second, of course, was just support and family and a community of Adapt Defiers who I found to show me what was possible.
You have a beautiful family, man, and I'm sad to hear your son had to witness this, but I'm happy to say we can look, into the future and see this awesome family together, man. But I had no idea about that part of your story. So you knew at that point, life, at Impact, life is probably going to be completely different now in terms of movement, that is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in the first 6 weeks to 2 months, they say, well, you may get things back, you may get movement back. So of course you hold on to that hope. And I watch people in the same hospital as me regain their movement and mobility and walk out of the hospital. And that's what I was hoping would happen to me. And it was rough, man. It was rough coming to the realization that, in actual fact, this was going to be my lot for the meantime in terms of what I could do with my legs. I didn't realize at that point what you can actually do with the rest of your body and with your mind. And once I got that and that hope, I was away, and it was a decent 3 years of learning to live life again and get the everyday functions before I had the energy to think about something like Adapt Defy and think about, a new career and starting a new company.
I've interviewed a lot of people. I've been around a lot of organizations that are in the adaptive realm and many other realms. What makes your organization so different is that you're actually creating products too that better the lifestyle of those adapting to various things going on. You have many products out there, or you have several products out there, including one that's in a Kickstarter mode. What is the Lap Stacker, man?
Yes, thanks, man. So the Lap Stacker came about again just through some frustration that I felt. You use a wheelchair, you are using your hands to push, right? And you don't have another set of hands to hold on to items and carry them. And I wanted the freedom to be able to carry as much as I could and still push my wheelchair. I had this moment one day where I was carrying some tools up to the house we'd been renovating, and I like to muck in and renovate as well. So I had these tools on my lap, and I went over a wee bump, and all the tools went everywhere, and I was just like, so frustrating. Another case, I grabbed some sushi in a takeaway container when I was in town one day, and again, I went over a bump. I was running late for a meeting, and the sushi went everywhere, and I was just like, what? This sucks, right? And so the idea was, hey, why not just build some sort of strap system that will secure items to your lap and free up your hands and enable you to just move with ease. And that was the early concept of the Lap Stacker. So essentially, it's the world's first retractable strap system for wheelchairs. It attaches at this point in time to any manual wheelchair and is a retractable self-locking strap with these really beautifully designed magnetic locking buckles. And people with reduced hand function can use them as well. We've designed some finger loops into them so that quadriplegics with limited hand function can still use them. And so I can strap items down on my lap, on my wheelchair, and move around without worrying about them falling off. And when I dug down into it, what I discovered was that by dropping things, it made me feel slow. And as wheelchair users and people with spinal cord injuries out there can attest, everything takes longer. It takes you longer to get dressed. It takes you longer to get in and out of your car. Everything just seems to take a lot longer. And so by removing some of those things that slow you down, dropping an item or fumbling to try and hold onto something, you've got one little piece of that freedom back. And so that's the Lap Stacker. And it's like you said, it's on Kickstarter. We're raising money and pre-selling these so that we can go and manufacture them in larger quantities and take them and put them in the hands of people that need them the most.
I like your Kickstarter. I like that you can hop in and, start funding, and there's things you can get back. You know what I mean? And like the favorite thing when I was looking into it the other day is that if you don't need a Lap Stacker, you still gift it. So you can, contribute $200, let's say, or $300, and you can gift that to others that are in need. And that's what I plan to do. And, it seems like there's different levels of it. Have you found good response? I know it's really early on for the Kickstarter.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we launched the Adapt Defy website at basically New Year's Day, essentially. So we had a very, very short lead time to build our community and let people know about the Lap Stacker. We're very proud. We hit our target within the first 26 hours, and it's a 30-day campaign. So we're really, 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 really pleased with that. So it's sort of validation that the idea is needed and people want it, and that's fantastic. So the idea with the gift the Lap Stacker to charity was that like some people don't need a Lap Stacker, some people don't even know somebody that uses a wheelchair, but we have partnered with certain charities out there around the world, and we will give them the lap stackers that people gift, and they can then distribute it to those in need.
Where have you seen the most response besides your own backyard?
We've had backers from all over the world. The UK and the US have been two big areas.
Yeah.
And also Australia. We've had guys from Japan, a few people from Spain, sort of all over really, I guess. But mostly the US and the UK in terms of outside of New Zealand. It's great. There's a number of links there, including yourself, and there's great organizations and non-profits in those countries that share our vision.
Yeah, I think it's pretty important to share this. But it's beyond, you being here is beyond your product and so forth. It's your organization, your story, everything. I'm all about the stories, and you're all about the stories too, but we're all about that and building up the community. And speaking of which, you're podcasting. And so you have a series of episodes that release on batches and so forth. What got you going into podcasting, man? What got you finally motivated to get that voice out there?
Well, it's interesting. I have a good friend, Chris Herbert, who does a lot of audio work and a lot of podcasting, and a good friend who actually runs a radio station here in New Zealand. And so the idea of audio had sort of appealed to me through their experience. But also, if I want to connect with people overseas and bring all their stories together, I found that audio is one of the best ways. Obviously, video would be amazing, but you don't always have the capacity to be able to do the video footage with someone like yourself who lives on the other side of the world. So audio is certainly great. And then we take that audio, of course, and we write an article. And so for those that want to read rather than listen to the podcast, they can do it that way. Our intention in the future is certainly to produce more video content and bring the visual element to it. But I also know that, and I love listening to podcasts. I love listening to audiobooks when I'm commuting. It's a good way to just dive deep into a person's story, and it actually makes them feel they feel comfortable sharing more often than not via audio rather than video. So you're more than likely to be able to just get straight to the heart of a person's story without them feeling self-conscious about how they look. I'm sure you could feel the same way about that.
Yeah, for sure. I think video has its limitations, and especially when we're Skyping, they just have to stare at our face, like what is going on. So I've been in other realms where we get in a room and we all talk and it's video, and it really works out well. But sometimes in our subject matter, a lot of times this is a worldwide affair, man, and so it's hard to get everybody in a room. So I totally understand the complications that come with that. Now, your type of guest, for our listeners, what types of guests do you get on, man?
Yeah, so we've had world-class athletes, entrepreneurs, we've had sporting people, people that are fashion and lifestyle focused. So, for example, Samantha Bullock is an inclusive fashion model. She's done London Fashion Week. We've had world adaptive surfing champions. I guess people just pushing the boundaries. And at this point in time, primarily those with spinal cord injuries, although I would very much like to connect with other people who use wheelchairs. So those with spina bifida, for example, just any other people out there that have an incredible adaptive story and have pushed through and pushed the boundaries of what's possible in their life. They're our sort of guests.
I feel like you have better than others I've heard, especially when it comes to the chair and so forth, because you don't just know the chair, you invent off the chair. You know what I mean? And you're like, not just there, you understand the complications. You really have this thorough understanding, and then you're good at interviewing. You get great guests on. I feel like you're crushing it in that realm when these interviews and so forth. So I'm glad to hear you expand off to not just thigh injuries, but other stuff too. I think that's going to be awesome. I look forward to that. Now I got a question for you. I ask all podcasters this, man, that I hang with. I ask not just podcasters, radio interviews, like Bob Babbitt I just had on from Challenge Athletes Foundation. He has a radio show. And so it's not just limited to podcasters, but, you're not putting down the people that you didn't choose, just something that comes quickly to your mind. What's your favorite interview today at this moment? Not necessarily all time that you've done.
Interesting question.
Or one you'd like to point, let's say not necessarily favorite, but what's one interview you feel like pointing out today? That would be like a really good place to start for your podcast.
Yeah, sure. I'm just trying to think about which one springs to mind for me first and foremost. One I did recently was with Eric Kondo, and at first when I saw Eric online, I thought what he was doing was maybe a little bit gimmicky. And once I got speaking with him, I realized that he was actually onto something, and his approach to mobility. So Eric's a guy that rides skateboards on his wheelchair.
Yeah.
And when I first saw that, I was thinking, holy heck, man, why would you do that? And yeah. and as I uncovered his story, I realized that there was some real logic to that, and his approach to improving mobility for people by being creative with everyday available items was a real credit to him. I tell you what, though, the person that really stands out for me was Bruno Hansen. And Bruno's the world adaptive surfing champion. He's a South African. And the thing about Bruno is he's had not one but several near-death survival stories. And the guy, basically, you can't kill this guy. He went out post. He's been. What is Bruno? He survived a carjacking in South Africa. These guys pulled up, shot him, run him off the road. His car was burning. He managed to survive. The carjackers came down and beat him up after he had, been in this massive car wreck. Took $40 and left him for dead. He survived. Then he had this massive experience with depression, and he went to take his own life. His friends pushed him out on a surfboard, and unbeknownst to them, he was planning on just, rolling off and drowning. He couldn't drown. He couldn't sink. Then a wave came in and pushed him along, and he realized that actually, hey, this is kind of fun. So
that's the transformation right there.
Right there. Then he decided to revisit his roots and jump on a sailboat and sail across the Indian Ocean. Then he found himself in the tsunami in Thailand. He saw this wave coming. He cut his anchor, powered out, went over a 10-meter wave in his boat, survived while a whole bunch of other boats crashed and burned and people died. He survived, the tsunami. The guy he's got a very unique perspective on minimalism in terms of what disability is. He's counter to all sorts of medical advice, and give you an example, a cushion to protect his skin. He just doesn't believe in that. He says, look, toughen your skin up, and then you won't need that soft protective cushion.
That's so funny. That's actually pretty cool. That's pretty rad. I like that minimalist approach, though.
And for catheters, people use 8 or 10 a day.
Mm-hmm.
He uses 1 a month. He's found a system that works for him. He's managed to sterilize it, and he's polarizing in his views, and he's got very strong views on the world. But his advice was just know yourself, figure yourself out, and once you figure yourself out, you'll be a whole lot better off, and then just remain true to it. So I really enjoyed Bruno's. I enjoyed them all. Every one of the 12, 14 guests I've interviewed so far, there's nuggets of gold, and they're fantastic. I really, really enjoy interviewing them.
Would he, if you could pick somebody you interviewed you'd hang out with the most, not the most, that sounds horrible. If you could pick somebody you'd hang out with that you've interviewed, like you'd like to go, you'd hang out for a day with, who would it be?
There's this guy, Ira Edwards, and he's an Alaskan paraplegic. He's a big man, 6'5", and he's got this big grizzly beard.
Yeah.
And he's a hunter and a fisherman. And man, you see photos of him holding these huge salmon and with fistful of prawns and crab and I'd love to go fishing with him in Alaska. I'd just love to go out there and go hunting and fishing. And he's just full of life. The photograph of him on the social tile and on the podcast is of him laughing kind of almost maniacally and holding these prawns, and he's a paraplegic. He hasn't let that stop him from enjoying the outdoors and enjoying life. I'd love to hang out with him. I'd love to hang out with every single one of these people. For sure. They've got so much to give and great stories. And that's what I want to bring to the community, to the world, not just for people that seek inspiration from them for their own benefit because they're, wheelchair users, they have some common ability, but for other people out there that are, able-bodied, quote unquote, that can just see, hey, you guys are actually, you need to do more because all of these people here are crushing it. They're living an awesome life, and you complain maybe about a few things. Well, hey, just listen to a couple of these podcasts and put into perspective where you are in life, And so if we can make other people out there, not just in the disability community, realize that life can be fantastic no matter what your situation, then then we've won.
You have adventure in your heart still. Like I hear it. Like I can
Totally.
I can hear that. What's your favorite adventure you've done since since injury? I know some of your adventures. By the way, that trip, across the Pacific, that's incredible. But anyways, what was your favorite adventure in the last few years?
So I've done a few adventures. I've done some rafting trips. That was early on. So maybe six months after the injury, we did this multi-day rafting trip with a friend of mine, and Ocean was just a young boy. And the west coast of New Zealand is rugged, and it's some of the best kayaking and the most crazy terrain. The mountains drop steeply down to the sea, and so a friend of mine he is just the real deal Bear Grylls, essentially. He took us on this rafting trip and stretched my mind as to what was possible. He basically just piggybacked me down into the river and into the boat, and off we went. Another one was adapting my hand cycle with a trailer and then heading into the mountains into a remote hut. And there was all sorts of barriers. There was fences and rocks and all sorts of things. And we had a couple of families and many hands, and that was a real coup for me to feel that sense that I could actually get into the backcountry away from people. I guess another one was learning to surf and surfing some 10-foot waves on my wave ski and just getting ragdolled and rummaged up and that was great, and surviving, right? And that sense of, okay, I can put myself in these situations. My latest thing is actually fishing, and I bought a little rigid inflatable with a 30 horse on the back of it and fitted a pedestal seat so that I can sit securely. And after this, actually, in a couple of hours, I'm going to take Ocean and his friend out, and we're going to go fishing for the afternoon. And we're going to spend basically the whole afternoon.
Kiwis have the best lifestyle. You guys have proximity to ocean, proximity to mountains. It's all upon you. And if you're like an outdoors person, it's pretty incredible out there. And hearing you go out in the water, like 4 hours. I'm in the Mojave Desert, man. So I'm not used to that though. This Mojave.
Hey,
Desert.
well, you just need to take up rock climbing. I mean, I've climbed at Red Rocks in Nevada many years ago, and
that's my grounds, man. I've hit everywhere there.
So it's so cool. The States has incredible landscape. I mean, on a massive scale compared to New Zealand. The beauty of New Zealand is it's all so close, and you can drive an hour and you'll be in a completely different landscape. Whereas in the States, you need to drive, 12, 14, 16 hours to get to somewhere different usually. But no, I spent a lot of time in the States. I spent many months climbing in Yosemite and Joshua Tree and, skiing and hiking. And you guys you're blessed with fantastic landscape.
It's like an assignment, though. It's an assignment for like Kiwis to come over here, or at least live abroad at least for a year, 2 years, sometimes forever. You guys are so adventurous at heart.
Well, hey, come on down to New Zealand. In fact, I think people are starting to realize that New Zealand has a population of about 4 million, and last year there was 5 million people visited New Zealand. The number of people that have discovered New Zealand and are traveling here is phenomenal.
What organizations like out there were something that got, really supported you when you're getting off the ground besides Adapt Defy, which you started, your own world you started, but what organizations really got you thinking like, I can go out and do a bunch of other stuff?
So close to home, there's an organization called the New Zealand Spinal Trust, and they're, I guess they'd be similar to a High Fives or a Challenged Athletes Foundation, except they don't give equipment, but they offer peer support and they connect other members of the community. So they also do vocational rehabilitation. So in other words, helping people get back to work. It's actually an organization I work for. I'm their community and marketing manager. So it's basically helping people once they're in the hospital. So we have staff that wheel around the hospital and talk to newly injured patients and their families. And then once they leave, we're out in the community also helping people and steering them in the right direction. So I met a guy, Quentin Smith, who I've interviewed on the Adapt Defy podcast, and he was a guy similar to myself, loved the outdoors. And, he would just ring me up out of the blue. And at first I was a bit resistant to him doing that because I just didn't want to associate with other wheelchair users. I thought, I'm not one of you. Didn't want to be part of that community. I was just like in denial that I was actually, a wheelchair user. I was a paraplegic. But Quentin, he was someone I met through the New Zealand Spinal Trust, and he was just immense. He gave me help setting up my sit ski, and I was just there to offer advice about bowel and bladder and all those things that the complications of a spinal cord injury. There are other organizations out there, and you'll know this around the world that help you get back into sport. In New Zealand, we have similar ones. I was never a basketball player or a wheelchair tennis player, so I haven't entered into that yet. Although I'd love to give that a go. But so there are some other organisations out there that help. But mostly it was, and this is partly the reason for Adapt Defy. Mostly it was just reaching out to one person at a time, and then having recommendations from them and trying to find someone who knew about surfing. And it wasn't easy to find all those people, and to actually have the information at your fingertips. And social media has certainly helped. It's come a long way since then, and so that's brilliant. And I guess this is just our contribution with the Adapt Defiers to document and share the Adapt Defy stories, as many as we can, so that people can just click on Adapt Defy and know they can find someone that will resonate with their situation, and maybe can reach out to them. The contact details are there on their profiles. Reach out on social media, say, hey, introduce themselves. That was one thing that I forget who said it. Maybe it was Joe Stone, and he said, you've got to go after it, man. People aren't, and Samantha Bullock, she said, people aren't going to ask you if you want to be a fashion model, a wheelchair fashion model. You've got to go and approach them, So, that was a piece of advice that I've always taken, and I recommend to others. People will help you if you go and seek the help and you show the initiative. And so you don't really necessarily need organizations to help you, but find one person with experience and just give them a call. Say, hey, can you help us with this? And 9 times out of 10 they will, and then they'll recommend someone else, and then you speak to them, and then that's how the network effect works. And before you know it, you've got this massive resource of people around you with all this experience that you can call upon.
I'm lasered in on something you said, though. I think it's really important. And I also think it's probably a really difficult position to be in, is that you wheel into a room after somebody has gone through trauma and you're one of the first resources they're going to talk to, one of the first people they're going to talk to hear about possibilities now. What's that like?
Are you talking about just into any social situation where people?
No, I mean, like
ask
when you go to a newly traumatized person, when you go to somebody that had maybe a new accident, maybe whatever, and they have an injury, and it sounds like the organization you're with, the Spinal Trust does that. Have you been involved in wheeling in and just saying, hey, these are the possibilities, man, don't get too down?
Yeah, I have. I've had people, just like people recommended I speak to Quentin, people have said, hey, you should speak to Mike. You know, there's some common ground. Either they were a mountain biker or a surfer. And so it brings me joy to actually, drop in. And I saw a guy, Billy Dravitsky. He was a mountain biker, and he broke his back in a real bad mountain bike crash. Young guy, I think 19 or 18, maybe even earlier, 17 years old. And he's lying in the hospital bed about 2 weeks in, and someone had asked if I'd roll in and have a chat to him, and I did. And I just brought confidence and hope, and he could see that I was like super fit looking, like I was in good health, and I was confident, and I could move my wheelchair. And he was lying flat on his back. He had tubes coming all out of him, and I said, "Hey man, don't worry, dude. You'll be ripping in no time. You'll be trust me, you're going to be absolutely charging it. You're going to be skiing, you're going to be biking, you're going to do all these sort of things." And to see the light go on in his eyes and the joy come, that was a real pleasure, And he's doing that. He's now skiing in Winter Park, and he's on course to be a Paralympic athlete. And so it's just great. You do get the other side though, and people that just, they're in so much despair, and they're deep within themselves, and they're not ready to hear the positivity, and they're not ready to experience that, and they're going through their own struggles, and that's really tough. And I know our peer support coordinators, sometimes those sort of characters are rude to them. They tell them to piss off, and they, and that's hard, man. That's real hard, because you just want to help. And but they also they're experienced, and they know that everybody goes through their own journey and their own grieving process, and you just give them time, and just reassure them that, hey, there's a community here for you, willing and waiting to share their experience when you're ready. And inevitably, 90% of them, they do come around, and some of them actually they figure it out on their own. They don't need any extra support, and that's great. That's awesome. The ultimate aim is just to get people back up and rolling and living the best life they can. But of course, there's always people that slip through the gaps and are still struggling. They're out there now. They're struggling with pain, and with their social situation isn't as supportive as others. Their financial situation is a struggle. It's a holistic thing. It's not just whether or not one person has the mental fortitude. It's all the people around you. So by just doing one small thing, by sharing people's stories, I'm hoping that's just one other prop that will prop people up and give them one more resource that they can use to help them adapt and defy.
The adaptive community, for instance, or communities in general, are often broad. They try to cover, even my podcast, we go broad, we go everywhere, but I feel like there's a huge gap in, getting narrow, specifying what's going on. And there's a huge community that needs that. There's no resource. There's no database. When I say database, I don't mean go get an Oracle database. I mean a database of people that share similar experiences and figure it out. It feels like there's a lot of nonprofits that are out there like, hey, we'll get you surfing again. We'll get you riding a board again. We'll do whatever. We'll get you out there. But then when it comes down to an actual centralized community that, say, has gone through spinal cord injuries or is a chair user or whatever it is, there's that specific community for it. It's not, I think you're one of the few. And you've already set it on fire. You said that, you got to go get it yourself. You're already going and getting it. What
I discovered was I didn't want to be wrapped in cotton wool. And, I didn't want to be like, just take it easy. You're now disabled. You should really just, watch yourself. And you, in hospitals, you tend to get a lot of that. And also, nonprofits and charities out there, there's a lot of them that take a very politically correct and just a real gentle kind of middle of the road point of view. And I wanted to create a brand and a movement that people could look up to and go, I fit that. And this is about actually not speaking down to me. It's about empowering them to go, you know what, I'm going to totally push myself and this is the Adapt Defy way, is to definitely push yourself, not be afraid to go out and hurt yourself again. Right now, that's a bold statement, but
that's a really bold statement. I love it.
Essentially, I don't want people to stop living their truth in their life and go out there and, a lot of people that I've interviewed, broke their back doing something they loved, and then they're back out there again doing it, and they're still risking their life and limb doing it, right? And that's great, because that's who they are, and that's how they get pleasure in life. That's their freedom. And so Adapt Defy is about continuing to push through and do what you love. And I want it to be, I look at things like Red Bull, where it's so clear the tribe of people that believe in the Red Bull philosophy, and all of the people, all of the Adapt Defiers that I've interviewed for Adapt Defy, they all fit this a similar characteristic, and that they're just out there going hard in their life, and that was who I was. And for those that are out there listening, if you're one of those people, then join us on this movement where we're not going to just stop because we had a mishap or we had an accident. We're just going to basically climb over that tree that's fallen across the pathway, and we're just going to keep moving. We're going to just brush aside that obstacle, and we're just going to keep going on a slightly different path, but nonetheless, no one's going to wrap us in cotton wool.
That's amazing. And I love that saying, nobody's going to wrap us in cotton wool. I'm going to use that on my kids today. I'm going to use it on everybody. All right. I love your saying, don't be afraid to hurt yourself. And I love your idea of, these nonprofits, they're oftentimes really politically correct. They're kind of hands off, really sensitive to everything, which is cool. It has its place at the table. I'm not fighting it or anything, but that's not my realm either. I'm definitely somebody that just get in and go after it. And if you want to use it as inspiration, great. If you want to use a story as whatever, go for it. And that's what I love about what you're doing here. That's really cool that you're approaching it that way. Like, where are you going next? You're already inventing products. You're already like actual usable products. Where are you going next, man?
So yeah, Adapt Defy. I mean, look, I think you pointed it out before. We want Adapt Defy to be a place you can go where you're going to get all the resources you need. If you're an Adapt Defy, you're someone that isn't afraid to go out there and hurt themselves again, you're going to be able to come to Adapt Defy and contribute to that community, to share your experience. I don't know where Adapt Defy is going to go short of continuing to invent products that help the Adapt Defiers of the world. I've got a huge list of them. The next one we're going to launch is the bike, and that's super exciting. We can't wait to share that. I really can't tell you, and I suppose that's the thing about being adaptable is, sure, have a goal, focus on where you are right now and make that a reality, but also be flexible and understand that things change. And I might interview an Adapt Defier and they might steer the course of the whole company through that interview. I like to be nimble and flexible. But in the meantime, we're just going to release an Adapt Defier interview every single week and continue on our development roadmap. I'm still working a full-time job as well as building Adapt Defy. I have another company called Urigo, which is developing wearable technology to sense bladder fullness and communicate that to a smartphone. I've got lots of things going on. I'd like to make Adapt Defy my full-time role. We're going to be raising some capital here shortly, which will help turn that into reality. And then we're just going to accelerate and bring these product ideas to solve the problems that I see, and we're going to bring them to market and bring them to reality. So if anyone listening has some problems they want solved, by all means, connect with me. Let's collaborate. We can see how we can work together. If you've got ideas that you need expertise in to make a reality, or you've got products that you don't have a decent brand to wrap around it, let's talk. I'm open to conversations around how we can work together on that.
Are your products, at this point, they're mostly exclusive to somebody that's gone through spinal cord injury or somebody that's in a chair?
Yeah, so Adapt Defy at the moment is developing. So the lap stacker is for wheelchair users, and it could be anybody. Same with the bike that we're developing. It could be for anybody that has lost functionality in their legs. But I guess maybe what you were asking earlier is what is the limit as to adaptive products that we can invent and contribute, and there is no real limit there. If someone's got a problem that's worthy of solving and we think we can help solve it, we'll do our best, for sure. And as we grow, we will continue to put energy and capital into R&D and developing those solutions.
That's really cool, man. That seriously is. It's really cool to see this organization blossom. I want to be on the ground floor though. If you go public, I need some insider trading, and I need to put something in there because that'd be helpful for retirement. I think you actually have something, man. I think you have something great going on. So really cool to see it develop. Now, best way to hang out with Adapt Defy. What's the best way to hang out with Mike Brown?
So if you want to get sort of more behind the scenes and personal glimpses of me and the Adapt Defy team, and I suggest going to Instagram at Adapt Defy. Facebook at Adapt Defy as well is where there's a lot of content we'll be putting up, every interview. I recommend signing up to our email list and just selecting what information you want, and we'll just ping you an email specific to that. So if you want an update about the interviews, we'll flick you out an email. If you want to know about upcoming products and specific products, then we'll drop you an email about that. We're on Twitter. We don't use Twitter too much, but we're there.
Neither do I.
So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, drop us an email, and of course, feel free to send me an email, Mike at adaptdefy.com if you want to connect, you want to share something, or you want me to answer a question. I'm wide open. So drop me a line.
Since you asked if you want to ask a question, does your wife get sick of you like tinkering around and always coming up with new stuff and keeping busy? Does she ever want you to slow down? What?
It's an interesting juggling act. Having a relationship and having a good relationship with your spouse, but also with your business partners, and it's a juggling act, really. I think she'd like to see me take care of my health maybe a little more. I wear myself out. I work 80 hours a week. I work really, really, really hard, and I think she'd like to see me pare back a little bit. But she's incredibly proud. She's incredibly supportive. In fact, Kirsten is one of the reasons why I'm here and living the life I'm living. She's incredibly supportive. She often tells people that she's, that I'm the race car driver and she's the pit crew. And, without the pit crew, your engine isn't going to be running smoothly. Your tires aren't going to be perfect. She's a nutritionist through and through. She knows health and well-being, so she takes good care of me. She's a great mum. She's got a small business herself. She's a phenomenal woman. If you ever branch out and want someone else to talk to, she's equally an amazing woman. I'm lucky to have her in my life.
I think of this though, before we let you go, you're going to go out in the water. You're going to be surfing with your son. You know, you look back at everything that has gone on, man. 2012, before that incident, everything was completely different. You go all the way back in that time and you go all the way to now and you see your life, man. What do you think when you look at everything as a whole?
Yeah, I think lying there in that moment, in a way, I set a vision for myself at that time, and now I'm seeing it come to fruition. I'm seeing it come to reality, and you know, I don't know, I'm overwhelmed by the thought that I've actually manifested what I wanted to happen in my life post injury. And I guess the other parting piece of advice I'd give people is that only happens by setting yourself a goal and setting a vision. And it only happens by taking that first step, just that one tiny step. And that could be telling somebody about your idea. And then the momentum that builds from that and the idea that you've got this clear vision in your mind, things just happen. It's, they don't just happen, but they do. Things come into your life and people come into your life to help you make that happen. So 2 things: set a bold goal, set a vision, set a goal for the change you want in the world, and then tell somebody about it and see what happens.
That's awesome, man. I love what you're doing, man. Adapt Defy is a badass organization. Mike Brown, you're working around a clock. You're a badass dude too. 80 hours is ridiculous, but I don't think people get what it takes to hit success at times or to do something like this. You know, it takes a ton of work, and it's really cool to see this going on. And I want to see everybody kickstart the hell out of this lap stacker. Let's see what we can do. I know you hit funding. Let's keep funding it. Let's see what happens, man. And let's get these products out, man. I appreciate you coming on. Your story's rad. You're a great interview. I hope our listeners switch over to your podcast and check you out and see some of the stories. But of course, come back to us when they're done. I'm just kidding. No, but yeah.
Thanks, Scott. So good to have you have a conversation with you, mate. Really appreciate it. And I'd love to hang out sometime in person if I find myself in Vegas or you find yourself in New Zealand. Let's do that.
I hope I find myself in New Zealand at some point. That'd be pretty incredible. But yeah, in Vegas, I'm here, man. I'm here. I'm also in LA a lot, in those areas too. And so I'm an East Coaster by nature, but I fell in love with the West. And so anytime you're here, it'd be really, really fun to hang out.
Thanks so much, mate. Great to chat with you.
All right, that's the episode. Remember, you can find contact information for guests in the show notes or on our website, livingadaptive.com. On livingadaptive.com, you can also find previous episodes, writings, and a bunch of other good stuff. So go there. Peace.